Doug Hamilton is no stranger to the Lawrence School community. In his previous role as admissions director, he impacted countless students and their families. On today's LionShare Podcast, we're going to pull back the curtain and get to know a different side of Doug Hamilton, our new head of school.
You're listening to Lawrence School's LionShare Podcast with host Jane Iben.
The Lawrence School Choir sang the Beatles song Blackbird at Doug Hamilton's formal installation this fall. Let's start with why this song has such significance for Mr. Hamilton.
Way back when, in school, when we wrote on slate boards, not quite that long ago, but back in the late 60s, early 70s, we didn't have what was called Public Law 94-142, in which special education was really established. And schools did the best they could. So one of the ways that I lived in rural Minnesota, and when we started into school, they would come around, and I vividly remember this, that they put us in a large room and they came around and pinned birds on your shirt. And I just happened to notice, gosh, there's different colors of birds. Wow, there's bluebirds. Love bluebirds. Redbirds, boy, they sing really good. And then I looked around and there's these blackbirds, which I didn't know a ton about blackbirds, but they're birds. They're pretty cool. So what happened was at the kind of conclusion of them pinning the birds on us, everybody left with their individual flocks. So the bluebirds went out. I was a little disappointed because some of my friends went off with the bluebirds, and that's, okay. So then the redbirds left, and some more of my friends left. And then us blackbirds were kind of left in the room. And then the teacher came in and said, okay, everybody, we are now going to go to our classroom. So we walked out the doors, we walked down the stairs, we walked outside into the trailer, and that was our classroom. I didn't realize that they were kind of grouping us according to what they assumed were our certain abilities. But as the school year went on and I got to see what the bluebirds were doing in their classrooms and what the redbirds were doing in their classrooms and looking down at what I was doing, there was definitely a difference there.
And how did that make you feel?
I knew I wanted to read the books that the bluebirds were reading. I wanted to do the math that the redbirds were doing. And so I was just a little bit, towards the end of that year, I was frustrated that, my friends were reading these cool books. And they had lots of words in them. Although I couldn't read the words necessarily, I wanted to participate in that. And so it was frustrating.
Mr. Hamilton has come a long way since his Blackbird days in Minnesota. He excelled in athletics growing up and developed a passion for the outdoors. And after receiving a master's in education, he married his wife, Rebecca, and they have 2 grown daughters, Tate and Abby. As an indispensable member of the Lawrence faculty and administration, Mr. Hamilton was appointed head of school by the Board of Trustees, succeeding Lou Salsa upon his retirement.
There's 2 or 3 characteristics about Doug that I think are going to make him excellent and that excite us.
Nat Leonard is the president of Lawrence School's Board of Trustees. He's also an alumni parent.
First, honestly, he's one of our kids. So he understands what our children and our families go through before they're here, and he understands how important the whole complex of capabilities are that the school delivers. The second thing that Doug has is he understands Lawrence. He's been here for a long time. He's gone through lots of different roles. He's seen us grow. He's seen us go through good times and challenging times. So he has great experience. Third, he was mentored by one of the legends in the industry of teaching kids with learning differences. Lou helped Doug learn lessons, sometimes the easy way, sometimes the hard way. And I think that will help Doug be successful. He's a listener, but he also knows how to make decisions. And he has an excellent team around him. He has a great leadership team within the school. The families, all of them know him because he admitted their kids. The families respect him and they like him. And the trustees all look forward to working with him.
Families do know Doug. I was one who sat in his admission office. I first met you when my now 24-year-old son was in 4th grade and having a devil of a time in his public school. And my husband and I got in the car. We drove down 77, which was not something we usually did. And our hearts were heavy, and we had a lot of concern for this wonderful boy who was just having a really hard time in school. And we walked into your office, Doug, and we met you. And everything changed for him and for our family. And I've spoken to so many families who have had the same story. It's why I work at the school. Tell us from your point of view, what does that look like on your end? Because it's really powerful on my end.
Well, I think it comes from an honest understanding of what kids have gone through, as well as what parents have gone through. So personally, I also struggle with some learning challenges growing up, and that gives me a perspective of what kids have gone through. As a parent, watching my kids grow up and seeing the way that certain kids were treated and so other kids were not treated quite as well or equally, there's fairness issues that have to be accounted for. It has always been my personal, whether you want to call it a mantra or my mission or whatever, is to treat everyone fairly. And that is, everybody's going to get what they need. So, Jane, you came into my office and you and your husband, Chris, needed my time. You got my time. Your son needed my time. He got my time. I am grateful for the opportunity when parents put trust in an organization such as Lawrence School to come to us, because that's the most valuable thing that they have, and that's their child. And I have to honor that. And I think that's what you see anywhere, from the classrooms to the custodial staff. They're here to work for our children. And that's what the perspective I've always brought to any position I've had here at the school.
Brad Rogers is the headmaster at the Gauss School in Buffalo, New York. He started his career at Lawrence. Is it true that when Doug got his first job right out of college, you were the one that called him? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So it was probably around 1987 or 88. Lawrence had just moved to the Brecksville location on Wallings Road. And we were beginning to grow, and the enrollment was expanding, and it was time to add professionals to the team. And I was lucky enough to sit in on some interviews, and it was me on the faculty and like 10 women and about 50 kids, a growing school. In comes a male candidate, phys ed guy, Doug Hamilton. We spoke. It was clear that this guy had leadership and he had passion for the students. So after the interview, he left, and I remember we kind of debriefed, and I said, we're going to hire this guy, right? Oh, I think we are. Can I be the one to call him? And this is before cell phones. I don't even think he had like voicemail or an answering machine. So I waited like 30 minutes, let him get home, called him. Doug, it's Brad Rogers. We met a little while ago. He goes, yeah, just a little while ago. Okay, so I'm calling. I get to offer you the job. Okay. And Doug's thoughtful. So he said, well, I need to think about this. And I said, okay, you think about it. I'm going to call you back in 10 minutes. And I'm going to ask you to say yes, because we need you. And so that's probably as close to how it rolled as I remember. But I did get to make that call. And I'm so proud that now he's the head coach. And it's a great story to see him progress.
He never looked back.
I don't think he did.
There's not many organizations that have an opportunity to bring in somebody that they've hired, developed, mentored, and then have that person slide seamlessly into the role of head. this transition is fraught with risk. The way that I think we've gone through this should make us all feel good. It should make us feel good about the person we're hiring. It should make us feel good about the organization, because we helped grow Mr. Hamilton, Doug, into the leader that he is, and we've given him the potential to be the kind of leader that we're all confident he will become.
We conducted a broad national search to find a new head of school. We interviewed people from all over the country.
Jennifer Kaufman is a Lawrence parent and trustee. She headed the search committee that selected Mr. Hamilton. So Jennifer, what did you learn in the process of search?
We really learned two things. First, we learned that the best head of school for Lawrence was right here in our very own backyard. We also learned that Lawrence School is leading the way for students who learn differently. People came to Lawrence, candidates came here and loved what they learned here at Lawrence and took what they learned back to the schools that they're at.
Did that surprise you?
Absolutely. We were waiting to hear. We met with candidates and we said, tell us what you're doing at your schools. What are you doing differently that we're not doing here? And they all said emphatically, actually, what you're doing here is far beyond what we're doing, and we're excited to take what we're learning here back to our schools.
I love Lawrence School.
Brad Rogers again.
And particularly, I love what it does for students, the families, and the faculty. The teachers here are empowered to teach to their strengths based on the needs of their students. It's the ideal environment. And I said, as I think about Doug stepping into this role, call it homegrown internal talent. I mean, you've got the right guy in the right job at the right time.
Yeah, we were lucky the stars aligned, and that does not always happen. But I think a lot of that, again, is a testament to the work that the school's done over the past couple of decades. It's the right person in the right job because we hired that person, we developed that person, we retained him. Doug wanted to stay here. And then I had the pleasure and the honor of calling him and offering him the job.
I bet that was a happy day.
It was a happy day, and fortunately, I got, as I thought I would, an instantaneous response. So we should all be thrilled.
He didn't have to think about that one.
He did not think about it.
Doug Hamilton has been at Lawrence for 28 years. He's been a teacher, a coach, admissions director, and now head of school. For Doug, working at Lawrence is more than a job. It's a calling.
So I think anybody who finds success has to look at the community around them. For me, I never was necessarily discouraged about school because I found other venues at the school that I excelled at. Athletics was one for me. And so I had that feeling of belonging. But I also know there were so many kids who did not have that feeling of belonging. And I always kind of kept those kids in the back of my mind that if I have an opportunity to become a teacher, I am going to work for them.
It was just a moment, but getting up on the stage and just looking over the whole entire Lawrence School community. You had the lower school students, you had the middle school students, the high school students, and then you had board, you had parents, you had friends of the school, my family. That was my favorite moment.
And what does this community mean to you?
Well, it means everything to me. I mean, it's been 28 years of my life. I mean, I spend the majority of my life with this community.
Is it fair to say your door is always open?
I think it's always open, right? I'm going to take it off the hinges. But yeah, the door is always open. The phone is always available. And it's important for our families to know that, but I think it's more important for our kids to know that they can always come see the head of school if they've got a question or concern about something.
The Lawrence School LionShare Podcast is produced by Paul Warner. Original music composed by Lawrence alum Eli Manos. I'm Jane Iben.